Alright guys, hope you're doing really well. Today we're going to be talking about the Industrial Revolution and how it impacted the United States of America. Are we at the Civil War yet, Mr. Shoens? No. We're taking a little bit of a detour a bit. We're going to be starting Civil War very soon, but we got to talk about the technology that forever changed the United States because during this war, technology will be very, very different compared to the Revolutionary War. Now they'll still be using stuff like muskets, but stuff like the telegraph, trains, and a whole bunch of different stuff are going to be a major advantage for the North. So, Industrial Revolution today. Now, when did it take place? This took place during the 1700s. There was a change in method towards manufacturing, which thusly was deemed the Industrial Revolution. Hand tools were essentially being replaced by machines. The thing that's so revolutionary about this is if you had taken someone like from the Bible times, like Paul from the New Testament, and you had put him in any time period between like the 0 AD to the 1600s, he'd be able to adapt perfectly fine because society was relatively the same. But then once technology starts becoming a thing, well, then he'd be quite confused. Now, what does that term when it comes to like industrial and mean? Industry is just simply where economic activity concerned with the processing of raw materials into a manufactured goods. Turning the cotton into a t-shirt, that's industry. So cotton to funny t-shirt. You get the idea. Where does the revolution begin? It actually starts at the United Kingdom. I'd go more into detail, but coronavirus, so keep it simple. How does it begin? Well, it begins in Britain, but specifically it begins in the textile industry. In case you don't know what textiles is, it's basically cloth or woven fabrics. For centuries, people were spinning thread on spinning wheels. But then new technology came out, known as the spinning jenny. This basically sped up the process of turning threads into cloth, which will then turn into clothes, and this thing was invented in 1764. More threads equals more clothes. More clothes equals more things you can sell, and also people have more options for clothes. So this kicks off a revolution in the textile industry. Now, keep a couple things in mind. Prior to this invention, most people didn't go to stuff like factories or anything like that when it came to work. They actually worked at home. You'd have your spinning wheel at home and you would literally make a piece of clothing and then you would then take your horse to the market to sell that piece of clothing. Now, if you're thinking about today, do a lot of people work at home or do they work at some place like an office, a school, or a factory or so forth? It's the other way around. This industrial revolution starts that. People started to get to thinking, what if, hypothetically speaking, we just get a building, and then in this case, the first invention of the Industrial Revolution, the spinning jenny, we put a bunch of those in there, and people come and work in that building, and then they can just leave the clothes there and go home, and then the capitalist entrepreneur can then sell all the clothing at the same time. It's all in one place. You don't have to wait for the person to take the 20-mile journey to get to home. You get the idea. What if we did that? Well, that developed then the factory system. So again, industrial revolution. It's revolutionizing industry all over. So, and the factory system is basically putting the machines and people all in one central location. You see that today with car manufacturers. You see it today with clothing manufacturers, the iPhone, all that different stuff. And then people started thinking even more. Well, if we can do this with textiles, why can't we do this with like other industries? And that got capitalists thinking like, we could make a fortune. And if you don't remember last year, I know I'm going a little bit quick on this because a lot of this is a little bit of review actually, because it's all about business and economics. The capitalists were simply people who invested capital, money, or into a business in order to make a profit. And they would do the three factors of production, etc., etc. Then this revolution kicks off. Now, the next invention that's going to kind of kick into the next gear was the invention of the steam engine. Now, a guy named Thomas Savery invented the steam engine actually way back in 1698, but it really didn't have any use at that point. But then because of this industrial revolution, there suddenly was a use for it. What if we took steam power, which at this point Thomas Savery was gone, so Richard Arkwright took the idea of the steam engine, and then took that textile plant and made it steam power. You didn't even need someone to hand spin the threads on the spinning jenny anymore. You could use steam power, and then the workers can do other things such as getting the clothes ready and stuff like that. That's going to kick the Industrial Revolution into another gear. Now, when it comes to the steam engine, though, Britain will guard this secret of the steam engine as if it was a national treasure. Now, this is where I usually in the classroom be like, hey, why would Britain guard the idea of the steam engine and not share it for the benefit of humanity? Well, think about it. The rest of the world is still making textiles the old-fashioned way. You have spinning wheels in your home and people are bringing it to market. Britain, where the Industrial Revolution starts, is making factories, and now they're making steam-powered textiles. You could have those running 24/7, and you could have workers just monitoring it instead of just the typical person works in their house for 8 hours and then they do other things. If you keep that secret to yourself, you could sell textiles cheapest, and then obviously people are going to buy where the things are cheapest, right? Yeah, if it's the same good. And that's when the Industrial Revolution eventually turns into American soil. So the spinning jenny and the steam engines kick the Industrial Revolution off, and then those things are going to migrate over to the United States. Now, it's going to be a little bit of a while because of things like the War of 1812 and stuff like that. But eventually, American enterprise is going to compete with the United Kingdom as well as surpass the United Kingdom. I mean, look at the American economy today. We're the biggest economy in the world for a reason. Now, America then took its own twist when it comes to this revolution. They decided to do something that was known as mass production. Pretty much, hey, let's, instead of having all these different products being made in one factory, let's just have one factory dedicated to one product. And they can just do that product really well, and you can build another factory next door or something like that. You see that all over in America today with like stuff like Coca-Cola and stuff like that. You don't have a factory with just all the sodas in the rainbow. No, you have a Coca-Cola factory, a Pepsi factory, etc., etc. Now, this would be a theme for many years to come in American history, but Civil War has nothing to do with cars or any of that or oil, so let's get to it. Ooh, cookies. One of the best things our country does as our country is it has something known as American ingenuity. We really have a knack at creating creative solutions and really cool things. The United States is responsible for a lot of awesome things, whether it be the assembly lines, whether it be microwave, whether it be lasers, whether it be the video games you play, whether it be the internet, personal computers, mobile phones. Americans do come up with really great stuff. But none of that's going to be around in the time period of Civil War. The thing that the United States is going to come up that is going to revolutionize the world is the cotton gin. Now, what the cotton gin basically did was when you harvest cotton, there's a lot of prickly thorns in cotton. And Eli Whitney came up with a machine that basically took it where you didn't have to pick out those thorns by hand, where you would stub your fingers, and the machine would take those out for you. Cotton at that point became incredibly profitable. Prior to this, it was kind of because it was like it took so long to produce the cotton. Now it could be done much quicker. Why does this matter? Well, you need cotton in order to use those spinning jennies in order to make textiles and stuff like that. And prior to the cotton gin, it took hours to get the cotton ready for it. Now that the cotton gin is invented, cotton is basically the equivalent of white gold. Basically, because of the cotton gin, people were now producing 50 times the amount of cotton they once were. And that's going to obviously have adverse effects on slavery, but you get the idea. America is going to kind of make a shot of adrenaline into this whole industrial revolution. Now, a couple of other things to keep in mind during this revolution. One, the factories were awful. I mean, machines were designed to do a task, not to protect the worker. It would be surprising if people lost their limbs on the job, which is awful to think about. Children did work in this time period. And if they weren't working on the farm, then why not work in one of the American textile mills or like a coal mine and stuff like that? And as you can see with these children, who are building a road right there, do you really trust children to build roads? No. Don't they have laws for stuff like that? Not in that day and age. In fact, you could work as early as 7 to 8 years old. They got paid money. That was about it. You won't see child labor laws until the year 1938. So World War I will happen, and child labor laws will not exist. Anywho, moving on. Another invention that comes out during the Industrial Revolution, which is something an American made, was the telegraph. Now, long before the days of instant messaging services, the telegraph was the way to communicate quickly with people. Prior to this, it was just simply to write letters. Basically, it's a device that sends electronic signals over a wire, and then you would read those signals and convert it through Morse code in order to read the message. Now, why is that important? Well, if you want phones and stuff to eventually exist one day, then obviously this needs to come first. And also, Samuel F.B. Morse invention worked by sending that electric signal over a wire. Why do you think there's stuff like telephone wires, like a landline? Yeah, even though no, most of you guys don't know or have had one because you're so young, and Alexander Graham Bell does not exist yet. Morse will come up with something really cool though. He called it Morse Code, which is a symbol of dots and dashes that translated into a word or phrase. And how did you do that? Take a look at that SOS there. The S was 3 dots, the O was 3 dashes, and the other S was 3 dots. Basically, through your telegraph, you would receive these dots and dashes, and then you would just plug it into the Morse code, and you would get a message. And you could send a message across the country with this, which is revolutionary. Otherwise, you'd be sending a letter. Moving on, though, steamboats. I know this is a lot of interesting inventions, but a lot happens during this time period. Steamboats are going to change the way the world works. Robert Fulton is going to use the steam engine to power a boat. No longer do you have to worry about sailing or wind. And guess what river you can go through and bring lots of goods on? The Mississippi, that really big river in the United States. So economics was booming because you could get stuff to market much quicker in a steamboat. And finally, trains are going to be a thing. The first train railroad in the United States was the Baltimore and Ohio, the B&O Railroad. Unlike steamboats, you can do these on land. The train did come from the British, but we were the ones who kind of took it and put it into overdrive. And that would forever change America. Trains and railroads can go basically anywhere, and even in between two mountains. When we get to the Civil War, you're going to have the North with this huge train system where they can literally bring troops to anywhere they need to, and that's something the South really didn't have. It also made getting products to market faster and cheaper. It also would even create time zones, which if you remember from 7th grade last year, which was fun for me to teach you, time zones will be created. No longer will that people be working on the sundial. People will be looking at the clock, and time will be different depending on where you are at. Anywho, that's a lot of inventions. One more thing that I wanted to kind of put in perspective when it comes to this, that this Industrial Revolution may have had a whole lot of awesome things going on for people, but things for African Americans in the United States are going to get a lot worse because of it. These new inventions and stuff are going to lead to a demand for more slave labor, and the cruelty will get even worse. I kind of wanted to point out this Bible verse because this is something that people used in the South to justify more slave labor as well as the cruelty for slave labor. Ephesians 6:5-8. Slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect and fear, and with sincerity of heart, just as you would obey Christ. Obey them not only to win their favor when their eye is on you, but as slaves of Christ doing the will of God from your heart. Serve wholeheartedly as if you were serving the Lord, not people, because you know that the Lord will reward each one of you for whatever good they do, whether they are slave or free. People use this verse to justify what they did with slavery, and they literally didn't read the next verse. And masters, treat your slaves in the same way. Do not threaten them, since you know that he who is both their master and yours is in heaven, and there is no favoritism with him. It's going to be an interesting discussion about what slavery was like and how the South abused it as we get closer to the Civil War.